Please be seated. The record will show the presence of the jury, the defendant, and all counsel. Mr. Martinez, you may continue.
Ma'am, how long was Mr. Alexander banging his head up against that door before something happened, before the next thing happened?
I guess if I had to guess, maybe a minute, minute and a half.
So for a minute and a half, he's doing this, and you're just standing there, right?
No, I was sitting on the washing machine downstairs when it began.
I see. So for a minute and a half, you hear it, and then you go upstairs? Is that
No,
right?
I'd say from the time he stopped. I heard the sound, then I jumped off the washing machine and went upstairs to find out what was going on. Found him in the
Let
bedroom.
me do it this way. As you're walking up the stairs, do you still hear him banging his head up against the door?
Yeah, I'm following the sound.
As you go into his room, do you still hear
Yes.
him banging his head up against the door? And then as you take a right and go down the hallway, is he still banging his head up against the door?
Yes.
Do you get close to him when he's doing this?
Yes.
How far away do you get?
I'd say pretty close, maybe from here to this thermos right here.
And while you're standing there, he continues to bang his head. From the time you stood there, how long did he continue to bang his head?
Till I said his name.
I know. How long in terms of time?
I couldn't say exact seconds, but I tentatively walked up to him. I'd never seen him act
When
like
you
that.
said tentatively,
Yes.
you walk up to him, and from the time that you get near him to where that pitcher of water is, how much time elapses from the time that you get to where the pitcher is to the time that he stops banging his head? I'm talking in terms of time.
I didn't let it go on long before I said his name, and he stopped.
Pardon?
I didn't let it go on for a prolonged period of time before I said his name. I wanted him to stop.
Okay, so how long before you said his name?
I don't know, as far as seconds. It wasn't long.
It was what?
It wasn't long.
I know, but you said seconds, and I didn't hear the first part of it.
I said I don't know as far as seconds.
Oh, okay. And so you said his name, and at that point, what does he do?
He spun and faced me. He had the eyes of a madman, and he screamed, "What?" really loud.
Right, and so this is what you're telling us is the same thing that you saw back on June 4th of 2008. You sort of almost described it the same way, that he had the eyes of a madman, right?
Objection, mischaracterizes their testimony.
Rephrase.
Ma'am, you told us that he was in the shower, right? On June 4th of 2008,
Yes.
right? That you dropped the camera, right?
Yes.
And that he got very, very upset, right?
Yes.
And he said some things to you, right?
Yes.
And you were able to see his face, right?
Yes.
And his face was like that of a madman, right?
Yes.
So let's get back to August of 2008. At that point, you said he had this same kind of look, right?
Yes, it's 2007.
Right, but it was the same kind of look, right?
The same, very similar, yes.
Right. And so then what happens? He has this look in his eye. What do?
I turned and bolted down the hallway.
You ran, right?
Yes.
But he's able to catch you, right?
Yes.
He catches you where?
Right around the threshold of the carpet.
Right, where he ended up with his head, with the slitting of the throat, right?
I don't know.
You saw the photographs, right?
I saw.
And you saw the big blotch of blood that was there on the breachway there between the tile and the carpet, right?
Yes.
Is that about the area where he caught you?
Yes.
And is that where he grabs you by the wrist?
Yes.
And he grabs you there by the wrist, and does he still have this look of a madman or not?
I didn't look.
Were you looking down, or what were you doing?
I don't know if I might have had my eyes closed. I was still not looking at him.
Pardon?
I was not looking at him.
Okay. And then he hugs you, or what does he do?
He yanked me toward him and put his arms around me and squeezed.
Was it a very hard squeeze?
It was a firm squeeze, but it wasn't too hard.
And then he apologizes, right?
Yes.
And then this confrontation is over, right?
No.
In terms of the physical aspect, the confrontation is over, right?
Yes.
So there may be some arguing afterwards, or there may be some words exchanged, but in terms of him being physical, according to you, that's where it ends, right?
That's right.
And this is the event that you tell us goes through your head as you're running down the hallway in 2008, right?
Well, when I went
Yes
to
or
make
no?
the no.
Yes or no?
No.
Okay, didn't you testify on direct examination that that's what you were thinking about when he was after you on June 4th of 2008? Isn't that what you said?
Mischaracterizes her testimony.
Overruled. You may answer.
At one point, yes.
Okay? So if this is the, and I know you don't like the word flashback or the thought, but if this is the flashback or the thought that you have on June 4th of 2008, then you know nothing's going to happen because nothing happened before, right?
That's not right.
There was a different ending back in August of 2007. Did he hurt you more?
No, that's not what I'm saying.
So he didn't hurt you more, though, right?
He didn't hurt me at all in August.
And if he didn't hurt you at all, to use your term, in August, and this is something that goes through your head, then the expectation would be that he wouldn't hurt you in 2008, and there's no reason to be afraid of him, right?
Not after he broke my finger, hit me, and almost killed me by choking
Pardon?
me unconscious.
Pardon?
It was not that.
What did you say?
I said not after he broke my finger, hit me, and choked me unconscious by
And this
2008.
is the same finger that you told Detective Flores happened on June 4th, right? 2008.
That's right.
That's the same finger that you're saying is the reason that you believe something else was going to happen, right?
Part of the reason, yes.
Right. And the other reason was what?
He had choked me till I lost consciousness.
And when was this event?
The week that I moved.
And that would be the week of April of 2008, right?
Yes.
Was this while you were living with him or staying with him for the week or some other time?
It was during that time.
And was this before or after your mother came out there?
After.
And during this event where he choked you, there are no medical reports, are there?
No.
There's no police report that backs up what you're saying, is there?
No.
There is no one that you told back then that backs up this supposed event, right?
I did not tell them that's why the bruises were.
Pardon?
I didn't tell them about that.
Right. So there, all we have to go on is your word, correct?
That's correct.
And
We're having some technical difficulties with FTR. We're going to need to take just a
okay.
momentary break.
were telling us, ma'am, about the incident where you claimed that he choked you before you left to move back to Wairika, correct?
Yes.
And when did that happen?
It would have been the first week of April 2008.
And you were at his house?
Yes.
And what were you doing?
We were having a discussion that led to an argument, and then it led to that.
What were you having a discussion about?
Several things. We were first discussing his dating life, and then we were discussing my dating life. And then prior to that, he was a little bit upset because I had re-emphasized the pamphlet that I gave him. Because I was
I'm not
thinking-
asking you about his demeanor.
Judge, she's asking what the discussion was about. She's explaining it.
Objection non-responsive. I just want the topics.
Ask another question.
And during this discussion, where was it that it took place?
in his bedroom.
And it escalated, according to you, into a point where he threw you down, right?
Yes.
And when you were down, that's when he choked you, right?
Yes.
And how long did this confrontation last?
I don't know.
Were you able to get up afterwards, or did he let you up?
I woke up and he was not on top of me anymore.
And he was what?
Not on top of me anymore.
Didn't call the police, did you?
No.
You didn't get any medical care, did you?
No.
You didn't tell anybody, correct?
I did tell someone.
Who did you tell, ma'am?
I told Matt.
You told Matt McCartney, right? That day you told Matt McCartney?
No.
You told Matt McCartney when? June 2nd of 2008?
No.
When did you tell Matt McCartney?
I saw him a few days later and he called me out on all the bruises that were on me.
And with regard to his statements, do you know why it is that when asked about that particular incident, he claimed no knowledge of it? Do you know anything about that?
Hearsay, improper.
Overruled, you may answer.
Do you know why he would claim no knowledge of that?
Objection calls for speculation why he would claim.
Sustained.
So, you don't know whether or not he, when interviewed, whether or not he admitted to knowing about that.
Objection is calls for hearsay judgment. It's the same question. May we approach?
You may. You may proceed.
Ma'am, you've spoken with Mr. McCartney, haven't you?
Yes.
And in fact, he's visited you at the jail, right?
Yes.
And in fact, he's even tape recorded you, hasn't he?
Yes.
And you've also had telephone conversations with him, haven't you?
Yes.
And in fact, you and he have discussed this issue about whether or not you had bruising around the neck, right?
Not during the jail visits, but yes.
But you have discussed it, haven't you?
Yes.
And have you discussed whether or not he has spoken to any law enforcement individuals regarding the bruises on the neck? Have you and he had that conversation?
What was the question?
Whether you and Mr. McCartney have discussed whether or not he has told anyone about this supposed bruising around the neck.
I believe we had a discussion somewhat like that.
And when was that discussion?
I don't remember. After the incident.
Pardon?
After the incident.
Where was this conversation? Was it over the phone or was it in person?
It was over the phone.
And how much time after the incident was this conversation?
Just days, I think.
And so if it was over the telephone then, you would agree that he would not be able to see whether or not there would be any makeup that was applied to these supposed injuries, right?
No, not for that conversation.
No, I'm not talking about any other conversation. We're talking about one conversation on the telephone, right?
Yes.
And you said that was 2 to 3 days after this alleged incident happened, right?
No, it was after he called me out on the bruises.
Pardon?
It was after he confronted me about them.
Well, you had a telephone conversation, and you said that this happened during the time that you were at Mr. Alexander's home before you left, right?
Yes.
And you then left, correct?
That week, yes.
Right. And during 2 to 3 days later, while you were still at Mr. Alexander's, you had a telephone conversation, right? With Mr. McCartney.
That's not the one I was referring to.
But you did have some conversations with Mr. McCartney, right?
Yes.
Is that when you told Mr. McCartney about your injuries around the neck?
Are you talking about 2 or 3 days after the incident?
You told me that you had a telephone call with him 2 to 3 days after the incident. Do you remember telling me that?
I thought you were talking about the incident where he confronted me.
I'm asking you about a telephone conversation, ma'am. That's all I'm asking you about. Are we clear now?
Yes.
This telephone conversation that you told me about, you indicated that you told Mr. McCartney about this bruising, right?
Yes.
And my question to you is, if you have this telephone conversation with him 2 to 3 days after this supposed choking, he would not have been able to see any marks on your neck, right?
No, I was in Wairika by then.
Ma'am, if it's a telephone conversation and you call Mr. McCartney, isn't it true that he wouldn't be able to see your injuries because it's over the telephone?
Yes.
So then you leave to go to Wairika, right?
When?
When you left. When was that?
Left from where?
From Arizona. When was that?
No, I went to see Matt after Arizona.
You went to see Mr. McCartney when?
I stopped to see Matt after I left Arizona with the U-Haul truck.
I understand that, but when did you leave Arizona?
Let's see. I believe it was 2 or 3 days after he did that.
Okay, so about the time of the telephone call is the time that you leave Arizona, right?
No. You're still fixated on the phone call. I misinterpreted what you had said earlier. There was no phone call 2 or 3 days later with the discussion of bruises.
There was no telephone call now, right?
No.
Okay, so why did you tell me there was a telephone call before?
I was referring to a few days after he confronted me about the bruises, which would put it many days after the fact.
So you're saying that there was no telephone call to Mr. McCartney while you were here in Arizona, correct?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying there's no discussion.
There was a telephone call, but there was no discussion, right?
I'm not saying there was a telephone call either. I'm just saying there was no discussion.
Well, you did reference a telephone call for me previously, right?
Yes.
And this telephone call you told me was 2 or 3 days later, right? Do you remember telling me that earlier in this conversation?
Yes, but I'm confused about what
Yes.
later you mean.
Okay, so you did tell me about it then, right?
Yes.
But now you're telling me that no, there was no telephone call 2 or 3 days later to Mr. McCartney after this supposed choking incident, right?
That's correct.
But you did leave Arizona some days after the choking incident, right?
Yes.
And that would have been what, April 7th, April 8th? Is that when you left?
I remember it by days of the week, but not dates.
Okay, what day of the week was it?
It occurred on a Tuesday, the choking, and I think I left town on Thursday or Friday.
All right, so you left 2 or 3 days later, right?
I believe so, yes.
Well, when you keep saying you believe so, it sort of leads me to believe that when you said Wednesday or Thursday, that you really don't know. So, did you leave Wednesday or Thursday?
Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, it was after the event, but I didn't stay like a whole week beyond that or anything.
So then you drive, and is this the time that you turn around and come back, or this is the time you actually leave?
That part, I don't remember. I'd have to look at dates, text messages, things like that.
So you don't remember if that's when you came back then, right?
I just know that,
So the answer is no, right?
no, that's not, I'm thinking probably not.
But you don't know,
Not for sure.
okay? So if you did come back, then you would have stayed more time there at Mr. Alexander's house, right?
Yes,
And then you do take off, and then you go up towards California, right?
yes.
And you take the 10, So-
First the 60, then the 10.
right? And you proceed to Southern California, correct?
That's correct.
What time of the day did you leave?
I don't remember.
What time of the day did you get to Southern California?
I remember meeting up with Gus
Right.
in the late afternoon.
So what time would that be then?
I guess if I had to guess, it would be like 5 or 6. The sun was still up. It's June, or I mean April. I don't know. The sun was still up, but it was like low, like at an angle. So it'd be
6
late afternoon,
So 6 o'clock then, right? That be fair?
something like that.
And then you're there, how long are you there with Mr. Searcy?
I don't know, an hour maybe, couple
And
hours.
then do you go to sleep in the truck? You said that you slept in the truck, right?
Right. After that, I drove for a while.
And then you slept in the truck, right?
I think I drove all the way to Hollister that night.
Okay, but at some point you slept in the truck at night, right?
Yes.
So it wasn't that night then?
I don't remember.
Could have been the next night?
Could have been the next night or the previous night.
Well, the previous night, there's only one night when you drive from Arizona to California. It's during the day, right?
I might have slept in the truck before arriving in Southern California. I don't
During the
remember.
day you slept in the truck.
At night, I believe.
Well, no, it couldn't be at night because you told us that you got into Southern California at 6 o'clock in the evening or when the sun was going down.
Objection argumentative, she's also left Mesa twice.
Rephrase your question.
Right? This is the time that you actually left to go to California. You told us that you don't remember what time you left, but you got to California sometime in the evening or the afternoon when the sun was going down, right? Do you remember telling us that just now?
The sun was not going down. It was late afternoon.
Pardon?
The sun was not going down. It was late afternoon.
All right, late afternoon then makes it earlier in the day, right? Around 4.
Perhaps. I don't remember times.
So it was in the afternoon then, right?
Yes.
Is that fair?
That's fair.
And if you take off from Arizona to get to California in the afternoon, by necessity, you would have had to have left in the morning, right? Not the afternoon.
If I didn't stop to sleep, yes.
Right. And so you're saying to me now that when you left on that leg of the trip, you actually went to sleep somewhere, right?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's possible. I don't remember when I slept in the truck. I just know that I slept in the truck.
Okay. Do you normally, do you remember sleeping during the day on the first leg? Do you remember that?
I slept during the day and at night during parts of the trip. It was broken up over several days before I arrived in Wairika.
So and then you get to California, you talk to Mr. Searcy, and then you drive, right?
Yes.
And you're sure you get to Hollister that night, right? You're sure?
I know that I was in Hollister the night that long text message came through.
I understand that, but you're saying that you left in the morning, you get there about in the afternoon. I'm asking you whether or not you got to Hollister that night. That's what I'm asking you.
I believe I did.
Okay, so now you're in Hollister. You spend the night there, right?
Yes.
Right, and then what time do you get up?
I don't know.
Where is Hollister in relationship to Monterey?
Oh, I think about an hour.
And so then you get up the next day. Is that the day that you meet up with Mr. McCartney?
No, I saw Matt before going to my sister's.
So he was down around Hollister, is that correct?
Where was he? No, he wasn't by Hollister.
So then where do you meet up with him?
We met up at his house.
Well, he lives in Seaside, doesn't he?
No, he lived in either Monterey or Pacific Grove. It was right on the border.
And Seaside is near there, right?
Seaside. Yes, it is near there.
And so back then, he lived in the same general area. And where's Hollister in relationship to Monterey?
I would say, well, Hollister is kind of northeast, more inland.
So it's above Monterey, is that correct?
Yes.
So before you even got to Hollister, to your sister's house, that's when you met up with Mr. McCartney then, is that what you're saying?
That's right.
Where? Where did you meet up with him?
I stayed, I can't remember where I slept, but I remember going to Matt's and Daryl's that morning with my U-Haul truck.
What's that? No, I didn't hear you.
I can't remember where I slept, but I remember going to Matt's house and Daryl's house, his apartment, with my U-Haul truck.
And what time of the day was it that you ended up at their houses?
That was in the morning.
And so, would that have been... But I thought your sister lives in Hollister, which is north of the Monterey area.
That's correct.
So would you have seen them before you went to your sister's house?
I know I stopped there before I went to my sister's house.
So what time did you get to your sister's house?
I don't remember.
Well, was it light outside?
I think it was because we had dinner.
And so that would have been around 6, right?
Somewhere in that ballpark.
And where did you, before that, where did you meet these, what time did you meet these individuals in terms of time before that dinner time? How many hours before that?
It would have been the same day, but in the morning. I don't know the hours exactly.
So you met him in the morning. Who did you meet first, Mr. Brewer or Mr. McCartney?
Matt.
And where did you meet him?
At his house, the house he was living in.
And is this the house that he was living in with these other individuals, or is this a different?
Yes, same one.
And that's when, according to you, he saw the bruises, right?
Yes.
And did Mr. Brewer see the bruises too?
No, I put makeup on.
Well, didn't you also have makeup on with Mr. McCartney? Isn't that what you had on too?
I thought I did.
Well, the makeup hadn't changed from Mr. Brewer to Mr. McCartney, had it?
Yes, it did.
And why is that? I thought you saw him at the same time, or at
No.
or about the same time.
After I woke up, I went and saw Matt. Some of the makeup had worn off. He confronted me on it. Before going to see Daryl, I put more foundation on my arms and my neck.
So you had it on your arms. Where else?
My neck.
And, okay. Now, this individual, Mr. McCartney, he's somebody that you will believe will never betray you, right?
I've had that belief in the past, yes.
Well, you had that belief after the killing, didn't you?
In September I did.
Well,
Not so much in June.
Let's take a look at, I'm going to have something marked as an exhibit. This is exhibit 475, which is our clip number 8. If I may play it.
trying to call my friend that's in Monterey. He is a person that I usually tell everything to. He's somebody that would never betray me, and he's somebody that he's somebody I could tell anything to, and I thought maybe he could. I was never able to make the phone call and get a hold of him. So it would try to dial it, and then the bar would go away and call lost and things like that. So at that point, I remember pulling over again at the Hoover Dam, and I thought, I'm going to call Travis. And I was able to have cell phone reception there, and I tried calling him, and it just went to voicemail, and I called him again, and it went to voicemail.
You heard yourself in there talking about Mr. McCartney, right?
Yes.
And he's the first individual that you called when you were able to get, according to you, or find the charger so that you could use your telephone back on June 4th, or at that point, June 5th of 2008, right?
I don't know if he was the first, but I did try to call him.
And he's somebody that, according to what you said, would never betray you, right?
Yes,
And that's what you said when you conducted that interview, right?
that's right.
And that was after your arrest on July 15th of 2008, right?
Yes,
And he's the same individual that, according to you, had this affair or relationship with Bianca, right?
that's right.
But you had been friends throughout, correct?
Yes,
And he's somebody that, when push comes to shove, is not going to betray you, right?
that's my hope.
Well, that's not what you said on this exhibit number 475, and I moved that into evidence.
Objection.
None now.
Councilor. .75 is admitted.
And when you say that he won't betray you, it means he'll stand by you no matter what, right?
That's not what I meant by that.
It's somebody that, if you need a favor, he's somebody that will help you out, right?
That would depend on the favor.
Pardon?
That would depend on the favor.
Mr. McCartney knows somebody, well, you also indicated with regard to him that it's just basically a friendship, right?
Yes,
But he's one of your allies, though, right?
yes.
This will be Exhibit 476. I want you to view this.
That's before May again, before.
I move for the admission of Exhibit 476 based on a previous conversation.
476 is
Which
admitted.
note page is this referred to, Mr. Martinez?
Pardon?
Which note page is correlated with this?
6. It's been previously provided.
No objection.
476 is admitted.
Absolutely. Friendships for sure. And, you know, you had mentioned Matt, and he and I dated 8 years ago. And at this point, he's like a brother to me. And almost to the point where imagine being intimate with him or kissing him is it grosses me out, I think. And it doesn't mean that he's a bad person. He's amazing, but he's more like my brother now. And I'm grateful for the experiences we've had. And he taught me so much. And I think that's why he was meant to come into my life. Because at this point, he's one of my best allies, and one of the best friends that I could ever ask for.
And this is the individual that you are telling us can corroborate the issue involving the injuries to the neck, right?
Objection, burden shifting, Judge.
Overruled. Me.
Yes.
Ma'am, the way you've been telling your story on direct examination, and I'll just pick an example, for example, the sex. The way you sort of narrated is that, yeah, he went along with it, but, you know, it really wasn't sort of your cup of tea. It made you uncomfortable. Remember telling us that?
Yes, some things did.
And a lot of the things that you've told us in this case, including the murder, for example, you keep saying, well, yeah, happened, but what you're saying to us now, it's not my fault, right?
That's not what I'm saying.
Well, you did say, for example, that Mr. Alexander was the person who was very upset, right? And he was coming after you and left you no choice. Isn't that what you were saying?
That's how I felt in that moment.
But that's what you're telling us, that that's how you felt, right?
Yes.
Let me show you an exhibit that's already been introduced into evidence. This is exhibit number 245. That's you in position number 5, isn't it?
Yes.
And that's you smiling in position number 5, right?
Yes.
But you have a reason as to why you were smiling there, don't you?
Yes.
Let me have an exhibit marked so we can see what the reason is. I move for the admission of exhibit 477.
No objection.
477 is admitted.
Judge, my screen is ready to go. I don't know. Okay.
That's fine.
Okay.
There is one thing I wanted to address, and that is my mugshot. And I think I did a little tilt on my head and gave a little smile. There's been a lot of attention given to that, especially on the internet. People speculating, why did I do that? How could she smile? I just want to address that because I think that people don't really understand. And there are a few reasons I did that, and one is one of my first thoughts when I was actually being booked. And I was a little like, wow, I see this stuff on TV all the time. This is so interesting. It's almost just like it is on TV. And I thought to myself, you know, what would Travis do if he were in this situation? This is why I'm here. And you know, barring the fact that he would likely not get himself into such circumstances, he would be smiling. He would be like, hey, you know, he would just flash this grin that he always does. And so there was part of that, and then also part of the fact that I knew it would be all over the internet, so why not? And then there was also the fact that I know that I'm innocent, and even though this is a very serious thing to be charged with, there's no reason for me to be sad. because I know that I'd never hurt Travis, and there's no reason to be upset over this in my mind. I have faith that in the end everything will be made known, everything will come out, and in the meantime, smile, say cheese.
Ma'am, with regard to this particular issue here, it's really not your fault, the way you explain it there, that you were smiling there.
Objection, argumentative.
Sustained.
Well, you actually indicate that the reason you do it is Mr. Alexander, right?
That's one of the reasons.
Well, no, you didn't say that that's one of the reasons, but Mr. Alexander's dead at this time. He's not going to know about it, is he?
Well, I believe he would.
You think he's in this life now and knowing about this,
I
right?
didn't say that.
You made that decision yourself, didn't you?
Yes.
You didn't do it with the consultation of Mr. Alexander, right?
No.
Even though you say that's what he would have done, you have no way of knowing that that's what he would have done, that he would have smiled, do you?
I have a way of knowing, but it's more like speculation.
Right. You wouldn't know if that's what he would do or not, right?
Not for sure.
Objection, ask and answer.
Overruled.
So you just made that part up, didn't you?
I said that based on how I knew him.
And you did that to make yourself look better. In other words, you're saying, don't look this way, look over there.
Objection, argumentative. Compound question.
Sustained. Rephrase.
You said it because you didn't want the light to be focused on you for smiling.
That's correct.
And part of that conversation also that we had is that you said that you were innocent. You remember saying that?
Yes.
And previously on direct examination, when you were being asked about whether or not a jury would convict you, you said, well, the reason I said that was because I planned to be dead at the time, right?
That's right.
Not because you were innocent, right?
Not in that interview.
Well, actually, in that interview, you also said, I'm innocent. No jury will convict me. Do you remember saying that?
Yeah, I did say that.
So it's the same thing that you're saying here, right?
Yes.
So it's not that you were going to commit suicide. It's because you truly believe that you didn't do anything wrong here, right?
I believed
Objection, argumentative.
Overruled.
I knew that I was innocent of first-degree murder, and I did plan to be dead.
Did you say that you were innocent of first-degree murder?
No.
That changes, though, that you're saying you truly believe that you were innocent of first-degree murder. That changes from what you told us on direct examination, though, doesn't it?
Objection,
Nothing
argumentative.
changes.
Overruled.
Doesn't it?
Nothing changes.
Well, in direct examination, you told us that the reason that you said on that Inside Edition clip, do you want to look at it?
No.
On that Inside Edition clip, that no jury would convict you was because you felt that you were going to commit suicide, right?
The reason I said those things?
No. In court, you told us that the reason you uttered those words was because you were going to commit suicide before the matter went to trial, right?
Yes, I was certain of it.
But that's not really what you said. You said you were innocent, right?
Yes.
And so when you went up there and you told us that, that's just not the truth, is it?
Objection, argumentative.
Overruled.
It is the truth. I'm innocent of that charge.
Or is it because the jury won't convict you because you will have committed suicide?
That was also the hope.
Now, the other thing, ma'am, is that in terms of the breakup with Mr. Alexander, that occurred at the end of June of 2007, correct?
Correct.
And what you indicated was that after the breakup, one of the things that happened is that rather than staying in Palm Desert, you moved to Arizona, right?
I lived in Big Sur, and I did move to Mesa.
Pardon?
I lived in Big Sur, not Palm Desert. I moved to Mesa.
How long did you stay in Big Sur?
Approximately 2 months.
And after being in Big Sur for approximately 2 months and being broken up with Mr. Alexander, you decided to move down to Mesa, right?
Yes.
It isn't a situation where Mr. Alexander is helping you financially, is it?
That month, it was.
Which month is that? I thought you were up there 2 months.
The month that I moved.
So he helped you the month that you moved, but you were really not dependent on him for support, were you?
I couldn't have moved without his financial
Well,
assistance.
is that my question to you, whether or not you could have moved here?
Objection, yes, it was.
Restate your question.
Ma'am, were you dependent on Mr. Alexander for your financial well-being?
In Big Sur, no.
And in Palm Desert, you weren't dependent on Mr. Alexander for your financial well-being there either, were you?
No.
You were working, I think you even said in Palm Desert, 2 or 3 jobs, right?
Yes.
And back up in Big Sur, you were working where? Ventana Lakes, is that where you worked?
Ventana Inn and Spa and the
Right.
Big Sur Bakery.
You were getting paid, right?
Yes.
You didn't need Mr. Alexander to provide for you in any way, right?
No.
And you made the choice to come down to Mesa, Arizona, right?
Yes.
And you made the choice as to where you were going to move, right?
Yes.
And in fact, ma'am, you indicated that there was a reason why you chose to come out to Mesa, right?
Yes.
And in fact, you indicated that it was Mr. Alexander, and that he was the reason that you came here to Arizona, right?
Yes.
Let's see how you put it. Move for the admission of Exhibit 478.
A moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
No objection.
478 is admitted.
Tell me about choosing Mesa as a place to live. Why did you choose Mesa?
Well, the main reason was because of Travis. He was a very persuasive person, and we had discussed my moving there. It was a topic of conversation for a while. There came a point where we decided to break things off, and I sort of hesitated on my plans to move there. But again, he's very persuasive, so he convinced me that it might be a good idea if I did move there. So I went ahead with the move, and it was actually a pretty good decision, I think. I made a lot of friends. It's a great place where the church is strong, and there are a lot of really great wards there. I really enjoyed my time there. So.
Ma'am, in it you are telling us there that it was Mr. Alexander, and he's the reason why you moved here, right?
Yes.
And it also appears to say that, well, it was his fault that you came here. In other words,
Objection, and Ms. Kirk her statement.
Rephrase.
in other words, you said, he is so persuasive, he convinced me that it might be a good idea if I did move here. That's what you said, right?
That's what I said.
He convinced you. That's what you said, right?
Yes.
Which means you didn't want to come, right?
Not after I found out how promiscuous he was.
Ma'am, am I asking you that? Isn't it true that you said that he convinced me that it might be a good idea. You're saying that he convinced you, right?
Yes.
Objection, asked and answered about 3 times now.
Sustained.
And that he was very persuasive, right?
He was.
And so what you're saying is it wasn't your fault.
Objection, argumentative, asked and answered again.
Overruled. You may answer that question.
What do you mean by fault?
What does fault mean to you?
Culpability?
Pardon?
Culpability?
Right. He was culpable. He's the reason why you're in Arizona.
I wouldn't characterize it that way.
Well, one of the things that seems to be a trend here is that you seem to be saying, well, I had no control over that decision. That's not true, right?
It was my decision.
That's right. And you were the one that decided that to come out here, right?
Yes.
Even though you had broken up, right?
Yes.
Even though, at that point, there was no relationship between the two of you. At that point, right?
There was still some kind of relationship.
Telephone relationship, right?
Telephone and mail.
Right. So there was this sort of relationship, but you knew that you were broken up, right?
Yes.
Right? I mean, you were the one that announced that on June 29th of 2007, you broke up with him, right?
That's correct.
And if you broke up with him, that means you had the, if you will, the wherewithal, the psychological wherewithal to say, no, I've had enough, right?
I could have.
Well, no, you did say that. You broke up with him on June 29th, didn't you?
Objection, mischaracterizes the testimony.
Regarding the breakup, yes, I had the wherewithal.
Right. And then, after that, you didn't move here to Arizona, right?
Not immediately.
No. The answer is no, right?
After the breakup, yes, I did move to Arizona.
Really? Immediately on June 30th of 2007, you moved to Arizona?
I said not immediately.
So you did move to Arizona on June 30th of 2007, right?
No.
You actually moved somewhere else to Big Sur.
No,
Right.
I was already in Big Sur for almost 2 months at that point.
Okay. So when did you come out here to Arizona if you were already up there for 2 months?
It would have been right before his birthday,
So when is his birthday?
July 28th.
So you came out here less or approximately 1 month after you broke up, right?
I came out here before that, but that's when I moved out here.
Okay, so you came out before, but you actually moved down here approximately 1 month after you broke up, right?
Yes.
And even though you guys are broken up, you moved to an area that's pretty close to him, right?
Yes.
And in fact, as this thing progresses, you even moved to another home that's even closer to him, right?
That's right.
Even though that you're broken up, right?
Yes.
Even though you say that there were these trust issues, right?
Yes.
Ma'am, one of the other individuals in your life was an individual by the name of Bobby Juarez. Do you remember him?
Yes.
And you indicated that you met him and then at a carnival, right?
The county fair.
County fair?
Yes.
Right. There were rides, that sort of thing there, right?
Yes.
And then after some time, you guys sort of just met, but you didn't see him after that until you saw him at a football game, right?
That's right.
And you said, well, I'm not very aggressive, but I really went up to him and I introduced myself, right?
I didn't introduce myself. I just asked if he remembered me.
Well, you went up to talk to him. How about that?
Yes, him and some mutual friends.
Yeah, is that yes?
Yes.
So even though you say you're not real aggressive, you approached him. He did not approach you, right?
That's right.
And with Mr. Alexander, even though you're in Big Sur less than a month or approximately a month after you break up, you make the decision to come here, right?
Yes.
So you have the ability to be, if you will, a person who can make whatever decisions are necessary for yourself, right?
Yes.
Even from the time that you were younger, it appears that you were, for example, assertive enough to go up to Mr. Juarez and say, do you remember me, right?
Yes.
And he said he did remember you, right?
Yes.
And you introduced yourself, right?
Yes.
And he introduced himself, right?
I already knew him.
So you knew his name, he didn't, you introduced yourself, right? Said, do you remember me? My name is so-and-so. Something like that is the way you told him,
Something to
right?
that effect.
Right. And so after that, you and he start to have a relationship, right?
A friendship.
But at some point you become boyfriend and girlfriend, right?
Yes.
And that boyfriend and girlfriend relationship, how long did it last before you broke up?
We broke up several times.
No, the first time. The first time that you broke up. That's what I'm asking about.
I would say 5 months.
And after you broke up with him, you broke up with him, right?
Yes.
And after you broke up with him, on September 23rd of 1997, you were working somewhere, weren't you?
97, yes.
Where were you working?
97. I think I was working at, I was in Wairika, but I don't remember which restaurant. I had several restaurant jobs during that time in high school.
Well, you remember that you talked to us about September 23rd of 1997 and the restaurant that you were working at when you were on direct examination. Do you remember telling us that?
I think I said the Purple Plum.
But you're having trouble remembering that today, right?
September 23rd, 97,
No,
yes.
the restaurant that you were working at.
On that day, yes.
Yes, even though you told us what restaurant it was before, when you...
Objection, mischaracterized his testimony.
Overruled, to me, answer.
I don't know.
You don't remember telling us what restaurant you worked at?
Not on that particular date.
How about, all right, how about a week before that date? Do you remember where you were working?
I was working at my dad's restaurant if it wasn't closed yet. If it was closed, I was at the Purple Plum or Grandma's house.
Do you remember that you told us that during this period of time, shortly before this September 23rd of 1997, that you were a server and an old individual, an old man came into the restaurant? Do you remember telling us that?
Yes.
Are you having trouble remembering that, or the way you said
I
it?
remember that incident.
Yes, you do remember that?
Yes.
And he used to come in, and according to you, he had a dog-eared Bible. Do you remember telling us that?
Yeah, it was a pocket size. New
Pocket
Testament.
size, right. And you remember that he talked to you about some of the scriptures and some of the verses inside that Bible, right?
I remember that.
And according to him, as you told it to us, the end of the world, pursuant to his calculations after reading the Bible, was September 23rd, 1997, right?
Yes.
And one of the things that immediately popped in your mind was that, well, Bobby, you thought about Bobby at that time, right?
Not immediately, but very soon after that.
Right. And one of the things that you told us was that he was not very religious, right?
Yes.
So why would he care to hear from you if some old guy is talking to you about the end of the world? Why do you think he would even care?
It felt like it was a moral responsibility.
Yes, you say that you feel it was a moral responsibility, but given what your relationship was, and he wasn't religious, why would you think that he would care?
My fear was that he wouldn't care.
Well, and so what, how is that relevant to you? How is that important to you since you're not even dating the guy? Why would you even care?
I cared about his eternal salvation.
Did you also go to your parents and say, Mom, Dad, I care about your salvation? Did you also go to talk to them too?
Ken had already talked to them.
Pardon?
Ken had already talked to them about
The
that.
bottom line is, did you go to them to talk to them to make sure they got the message?
It would have been redundant, so no.
Ma'am, the answer is yes or no. Did you go to them or not?
Objection, asked and answered, sir. He said no.
Sustained.
So you didn't go to them, right?
No.
And did you go to anybody? You were still in high school at the time, right?
Yes.
You didn't go to anybody else in high school with this message, did you?
I talked about it.
You didn't go to them with the message the way that you approached Bobby, though, did you?
Objection, asked and answered.
Overruled.
Well, since Bobby and I weren't talking, I guess that would be correct.
Right, because, and let's say, for example, if the people that you went to talk to at your school, high school, said, hey, I don't want to talk about it, you'd leave them alone, right?
Objection calls for speculation. What she did 15, 20 years ago.
Oh,
What she would have done.
Overruled.
I guess so.
Pardon?
I guess so.
Well, no, you were the person back then, and you knew how you were, right?
Yes.
And you wouldn't have. If they'd have told you, leave me alone, you'd have left them alone, right?
Yes.
Well, but you treated Bobby differently. didn't you?
No,
Well, isn't it true that you picked up the phone to let him know about this impending doomsday and called him, didn't you?
that's the reason I called him.
Right, you did call him, correct?
Yes,
And you called him, and he answered the telephone, right?
yes,
And you identified yourself, didn't you?
no.
Well, you spoke, didn't you?
Oh, I did identify myself, I'm sorry. Yes,
And he knew who you were because you identified yourself, right?
yes. The first night,
Ma'am, is that yes? You did identify yourself,
I
right?
said yes.
And he hung up on you, didn't he?
Yes,
And according to you, the reason you were calling was because, well, it was the end of the world, right?
no, not
Well,
yet.
didn't you tell us that the reason you were calling him was because September 23rd of 1997 was impending and you wanted to let him know?
Yes,
So after that first call, he didn't call you back, did he?
no.
But you persisted, didn't you?
I called the next night.
The answer is you continued to call, right?
One more time, yes.
Right. And you called the next night again, right?
Yes,
Didn't you get the message when he hung up on you the first night that he didn't want to talk to you?
Objection, argumentative.
I got that impression.
If somebody hangs up on you, isn't that a clear message to you that they don't want to talk to you? More than
Not
an impression?
necessarily.
Pardon?
Not necessarily.
So if somebody hangs up to you, that doesn't necessarily mean that they don't want to talk to you?
No.
Well, what other reason would they be hanging up on you if they don't, other than they don't want to talk to you?
It could be accidental, it could be a malfunction of the phone, it could be anything without explanation, I wouldn't know.
Okay, so that's, all right. But then you call them, why didn't you, if you thought that that was the problem that first night, why didn't you just call them right away? Why didn't you just pick up the phone and call them right away? To make sure that it wasn't a mechanical malfunction. Why didn't you do that?
I think I was kind of shy.
You think you were kind of shy, but that didn't stop you from calling the next day, right?
It took that long to work up the courage
Ma'am,
again.
it didn't, the shyness that you professed did not stop you from calling the next day, right?
Objection, ask and answer, she just explained that.
Sustained.
And this shyness that you professed didn't stop you from going up to him in a football game and introducing yourself to him, right?
Objection, ask and answer.
Sustained.
Now, you then do call him the next day, right?
Yes.
What time of the day was it?
I don't recall. It would have been after school, I think.
Would it be after work too, or no?
Objection, ask and answer.
Overruled.
I usually wasn't scheduled on school days.
Okay, and so you call him and you dial his number and you get him again, right?
Yes.
He answers the phone, right?
Yes.
And after he answers the phone, you identify yourself again, right?
This time I didn't.
Did you say something?
Yes.
So you didn't identify yourself, but your voice came through the wire line, right?
Yes.
And immediately, upon hearing your voice, he hung up on you again, didn't he?
That's right.
Didn't say a word to you, did he?
No.
Well, ma'am, with regard to that, you didn't really, then he calls you back though, right?
A few days later, yes.
Yeah, and he calls you back and you begin to talk, right?
Yes.
And it really isn't your fault, you can't take no responsibility for it, that he actually called you back, can you? Or that the friendship was rekindled, right? Because he called you back, right?
Objection, argumentative.
Overruled.
I don't know what you mean by fault.
Well, responsibility, how about that? Weren't you the one that was actually responsible for him calling you back?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for speculation. I don't know why he called back.
Sustained.
Ma'am, he hadn't called you back, or he hadn't called you before those 2 telephone calls, had he?
No.
He only called you back after those 2 telephone calls, right?
Yes.
And according to you, the reason for that was because you thought it was the end of the world, right?
Yes.
And so then you again start this relationship with Mr. Juarez, right?
What was that question?
You start this relationship with Bobby again, right?
Yes.
And at first you're friends again, right?
Yes.
And you stay friends until it becomes more than that, right?
Yes,
Sure. At some point, you even moved in with him, didn't you?
yes,
And this is during the time that you are what, a senior in high school?
junior,
Is this shortly before you dropped out or not?
shortly before I dropped out.
Right. And according to you, you were in school and you had a history test, right?
Yes,
And the way you told it is that you were very studious. You were studying for this history test, weren't you?
I
In the
wasn't
car.
very studious, but I was studying.
Right. You were studying at a time where you had to be somewhere else, right?
Yes,
And your father caught you, right?
yes,
Well, the reason you were studying at a time that you should have been in school was because you hadn't prepared for whatever reason to be ready to take this test, right?
that's right.
But that's your fault that you weren't prepared, right?
Yes,
But the way you made it sound when your father grounded you was that he was being mean to you, the way you presented it as part of your childhood.
Objection, argumentative, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Were you happy the fact that he grounded you for 3 months?
happy? No.
You're pretty unhappy about it, weren't you?
I was stunned.
Pardon?
I was stunned.
Stunned. So just because you were stunned, you decided to move out, right?
That was not the main reason. That was just the last straw.
Well, do you remember telling us that once he grounded you for 3 months, you said it on direct, that was the reason why you decided to move out, right?
Yes, that was the last straw.
That's the reason then, right?
Objection, mischaracterizes her testimony.
Overruled, you may answer.
Right?
What was the question?
The reason that you moved out was because your father grounded you for 3 months, right?
That was one of the reasons.
And then you moved in with Mr. Juarez, right?
That's right.
And the way you present this, it's like you never seem to take responsibility, man.
Objection, argumentative, Your Honor.
Sustained. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to take the evening recess at this time. Please be back in the designated area at 10:25, which would be the jury room. Please remember the admonition. Have a nice evening. You are excused. Please be seated. The record will show the jury has left the courtroom. Ms. Arias, you may step down. Counsel, please approach. We are in recess.